It makes me smile. How's the being grumpy going while you're...
It's funny, they're like, oh, your sweater's so happy, and I just stare at them real mean.
What's happy about it?
I don't know, like, what do you mean? It's a horrible day.
That's the best. So Katie, thank you for letting me come to your class, and it was amazing to watch. And I learned a lot. And I mentioned just afterwards that, you know, one of my favorite things was just the volume of your voice and the impact that had on getting students to tune in, you know, like, and so I really appreciated that. So let's just start out with, tell me, so it was the Goldilocks zone was what I observed. So how'd you feel about the lesson that day?
Well, it's interesting. I've done that lesson for probably 5 or 6 years now, and the opening part of that lesson is, you know, where they have to choose a side. Are they going to go to Venus or Mars? And 5 years ago, it was always mixed results, so it went really well because they would say, you know, some would say Venus and some would say Mars, and they all had good reasoning. But now, because of the advancements just in the last 5 years with like sending another Mars rover and discovering different things on Mars, they all say Mars. Like I didn't have a single group all day say Venus. And I would point that out to them and afterward. So it was kind of like it was a good and bad. Like I was hoping for some mixed reasons, but because it was all Mars, I was able to explain why. Like science, as discoveries happen, people's viewpoints change and their understanding of things change. And so that it was good and bad. Like, I don't know that I will do it again next year in the same way.
Right. What would you change?
I was thinking about doing where they have to choose between Mars or a planet in a different solar system that's similar to Earth.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, because then they would have to think about the logistics of how far they'd have to travel versus...
Right, but if they travel to the Earth-like planet, it's more likely to be habitable versus Mars, but it's closer. So I think I may try that next year and see
what
happens.
Do they know enough about Mars that you could talk about, you know, different area, you know, like you could have a hypothetical this location or that location?
See, and I'm not sure that they do. Some might, but I could probably do that and incorporate like more of a like this region on Mars or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, so that would be on you, but I thought the intro was really great. It was problem based and really got them into thinking about what makes a planet, you know, able to be habitated. Yes. What's the word there? Inhabitable. There you go. How did it go the rest of the day? Where I know you mentioned that part was the same in all of your sections. Were there any variations that you noticed through the day?
No. I was actually really surprised with this group on like the end piece, the writing piece, because I have struggled with some that just want to give me 2-sentence responses and claim that they're done, and you know, I have to like pull more out of them, but they did really good with that writing. I think it's an interesting enough topic that they were able to like keep going with it. So,
and it was nice that was the last piece because they had read something, they had talked with their group about things, and so by the end of the period they had enough to do that writing. I think if you had done that at the beginning, it wouldn't have had the same results. So that was great. And as an RLA teacher, I so appreciate you incorporating writing.
I try to. We try and write quite a bit, like open-ended responses and stuff. So
my OCD, I've got to check and make sure it's going because for some reason I just had this feeling that it's not going. It's going. It's fine.
I understand.
And I don't really have OCD. I shouldn't say that I have it when I don't have it, but okay.
It's called anxiety.
I do have that. I looked at the goals that you wrote down and kind of your learner profile is what I called it. I don't know if that's a correct term for this, but the thing that we talked about beforehand is just your impact or your emphasis on relationships, which of course I think is key, and people learn better whenever they feel heard and important. So I think that's a great thing. Now, you said one of the goals that you had to do with small group instruction, and then also intervention strategies for targeting certain struggling students. So this lesson I know was just kind of like an introduction to the unit. What is there anything that you're working on right now that you think you could incorporate those goals on?
Probably. Like, for example, like we're talking more about gravity and orbits right now, and how like the sun's gravity controls all of that. And I've got them working in partners to complete like a simulation lab. I could probably be doing, rather than just monitoring, I could probably be pulling some small groups. So the crazy thing is, this was never a problem for me before Talkington. You know, the school I worked at prior, all of my lessons were designed around just getting kids to get it.
Right.
And so it was a lot of small group and targeted like things that they're missing out and are missing as far as like knowledge and stuff, just to get them to get the content. But here, it's a lot of it is they get it right away. Now, how am I going to extend it?
Right.
And so then I struggle with like, okay, I'm extending it, and this is a super cool activity. Are there gaps? Like, are there pieces that they don't get? And I typically don't know that as early on as I used to until we take a CFA or a quiz or something, and I'm like, oh, you definitely didn't get that part.
Right.
So it's like harder for me to pinpoint where they're missing things. With extension activies.
Right, and
so
you
yeah,
have some kind of data to look at to see
yeah,
where that is. Yeah, and so I love your room is set up really great for like doing some sort of rotations and that sort of thing. So if you had a teacher table that they could come to, the problem that I find with that sometimes is you have to have homogeneous groupings. You know, sometimes I use like a quintile report or something like that, so to see where they are. But then you have to wait for the CFA to be able to do that, or a district assessment or whatever.
So we do a lot of station rotations, and I have a few times had a teacher table, but what I find, especially now with these COVID babies, their maturity level to work independently without my help is like gone. I mean, I have some that will get out of their chair and come to wherever I am in the room 20 times a class period to ask a question that they know the answer to, but they just need that reassurance. And it's exhausting right now. And it hasn't been that bad before. I mean, you always have a few of those, but it seems like majority now is so like to the point where like now in stations, I just have to be able to visit each station and make sure they're okay at that station because they can't handle it.
I asked that same question to my grad group the other day when we were talking about rotations. I said, how do you limit the coming and asking random questions, because then it's constant interruptions. And of course there were some elementary people in there, and they said, oh, I have a crown and I wear it, and if the crown, or if I'm wearing the crown, you're not around.
Nice.
Like, okay, I don't know how that would go.
I literally have a crown up there on my skeleton.
There you go, you could wear the crown. Or the ask three than me, or some of those kind of things, to limit the questions, but you don't want to shut the questions down.
I know.
So I agree with you. One thing I did just today that I don't know why I don't do this more often, but as I was cleaning, spraying, just asking the little questions. Tell me about this. Tell me about this while I'm spraying. And so I have mine in quintiles right now. So I went to my high groups first. And then once they figured out I was asking questions while I was spraying, my low groups were like listening. And so by the time I got around to them, they had been given the right answer, which maybe is not the best way. No, but they've heard it 4 times before I got to their table. And the bad thing is, again, you have to have the homogeneous grouping. You can't have your highs with your lows as much if you're going to do that.
And right now, because of the maturity level of my 6th graders this year, I have them grouped based on behavior rather than based on ability. And I haven't had to do that prior to this. I mean, some, but not to this extent, like where every class period is, they are sat there specifically so that they will stay on task.
Right.
And it's not like they're exhibiting bad behaviors. They just don't know how to behave in a school anymore.
Right.
And so, they don't understand cooperative groups, and it's just.
Yeah. Like we are sitting at a table, but that doesn't mean that when we're doing independent work, we're still talking constantly. I'm having the same issue, so we can work together. Maybe we'll figure something out. So that kind of addresses some of your goals, and I am right there with you with some of them, and I'm working. Lead Forward has a few things for intervention that I'm sure you're probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but especially when you're looking at those little gaps. I feel like because of COVID, there are a lot more of those that I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
And so some of those have been helpful for me. I don't know if that helps.
And so last year's group, was the first year back after the shutdown, and they were behind academically quite a bit. This year's group seems to be doing okay academically, but struggling socially and emotionally. I've had more criers this year than since when I taught third grade. So it's and just a lot of like hallway conversations about like how to let things go, and just and I do have tutoring after school to help address the after I give a CFA, if they were struggling or whatever, they do come to tutoring.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. It's more the like in class interventions, which maybe they don't need that much of, because they are getting some after school time with me. I don't know.
So one thing, you do such a great job with student agency, and that's one thing I was going to tell you that I really admired about, like they get their stuff and they have this, and they're in charge of their learning. And so maybe that's one thing you could even extend on that, is that they have like a personal reflection of where am I, and they could address that way. Maybe they're taking a little more ownership and it doesn't all fall on you.
Right. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I have things in place for that, but I am the world's worst about following through with stuff. Like I will start doing like the formative bell ringers on the computer every day, and I'll do them solid for 6 weeks, and then I'll never do them again. Or so this year I started these unit pages in their notebook that kind of break down the standards. What are we going to be learning? There's I can statements, and it has check boxes, and the goal was to go back and reflect. Can I do this now? Check mark. Can I do this now? Check mark. I can't do this one. I need to come to tutoring. We don't ever look at those things. We glue them in there, read them the first day, and never go back to them.
I was backing up my computer yesterday and looking through things and going, oh yeah, I remember that. Why don't I do that anymore?
I know.
I think part of that though is that you're reacting to what is happening right then.
Yeah, it could be. I just need to be more deliberate about, okay, we just finished talking about gravity. Let's go back, and if you can't check it off, come see me.
Right.
And that's not a difficult thing to do. I just need to be intentional about it.
Yeah. So, but I do think that you have a lot of things that are working towards student agency, which I think for our girls is really important, that it's something that becomes their own intentional thing, not that we're responsible for. So, and so I noticed a lot of higher order thinking. So the teacher moves that I noticed were a lot of higher order questions up on the smart board, and then just what you were asking out loud. And then you were giving a lot of feedback. Again, most of that was verbal that day, because it was a unit introduction. They were engaged, they were on task. They practiced the skill from the objective, and had plenty of hands-on activities. So, I mean, I was checking all of the boxes there, so that was really great. The differentiation we didn't see on this
Right.
necessarily, but
Mm-hmm.
that was probably the nature of what we were doing that day. And then the materials were easily accessible. I know it was first period, so you were getting the scissors out and stuff, but then they were there the rest of the day, and that was an easy fix.
Mm-hmm.
The video got them engaged as well. Even though they were kind of laughing at it,
Mm-hmm.
like it was corny or whatever. That's the beauty of video sometimes.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
you laugh at the video, you're not laughing at me. It's fine. And the respectful environment, I will say, that was great. They seemed to respect each other and to respect you. And so the things I put down that maybe, if you were to do this lesson again, and you kind of talked about already some things that you would shift
Mm-hmm.
about, how knowledgeable they already are about Mars.
Yeah.
And then my question, I guess it's really more of a question, is how much background knowledge do they have on the planets? I know you said y'all had been studying the past of space exploration.
So the only thing that we had covered prior, we don't cover planets in 6th grade. I think that's a 4th grade standard, maybe 5th. So what we had done the week prior to spring break was space history timeline. So it's like all of the events, like the space race between the Soviet Union and America, and so like first satellite into space, first animal in orbit, like the really just a timeline of events. So as far as like prior knowledge on the planets, I don't provide that.
Okay.
So they should have gotten most of that in elementary school. And so, but the terms like Goldilocks zone and habitable planet and all that are new.
Right.
For them.
Right. I kind of figured that out because it seemed like some of them remembered all of it or knew a lot of it, and some of them were trying to get you to give them the answer, So maybe a thing you could do would just be to have like a card with just little
like
bitty
info.
facts, like just a little card. Not something that they would be completely reliant upon, but just a little checklist.
Even it could even just include all the planets too. Like I do have, because I have a lot of activities that could be used, like comparing 2 planets activity, and then I just have, I actually have information sheets on each planet, so I could probably just like put all of those out to help with that. That's a good idea.
That might be, that way they're not just reliant on the one person that knows planets.
Knows about space, yeah. That's a great idea.
So, and then, maybe the writing at the end, they were writing at the end of class, and you looked at those later to get feedback, maybe just a revisit of the objective at the end about the Goldilocks zone.
I know, I'm really mad about that too.
So bad about that. So bad about that.
I know.
But that's what's great about this idea that we're doing in grad school about having teachers watch teachers, because then, the things I'm checking myself for are also the things, so it's helpful for me, and I loved watching you teach and just seeing your students engaged, and the pacing of the lesson was great. Like, it went from one thing right into the next to the next. The transitions were smooth, and they were engaged the whole time. So it was really awesome.
Thank you. That's definitely one lesson that is timed really well. Not all of them go that way. Usually I'm just like, oh, the bell's ringing, wrap it up, or
where's the spray can?
Or oh, what are we gonna do for the next 10 minutes because y'all finished? So yeah, I struggle with that a lot, especially, even class period by class period here. Like my last class period of the day is short. It's shorter than the morning classes, and it's short because it's the end of the day and we have to wrap up the whole room to leave. Right. And then, not to mention, they are all of the babies that are lower because they have reading intervention here and math intervention here, and so the only place they can fit science is 8th period. So, those, sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm just days behind with them. So, yeah.
And your lesson plans look like arrows?
Yep, we'll just carry that on over. And so a lot of my lessons end up not having an ending, like a wrap up. I don't do exit tickets, which I should, but I don't. And so that should probably be a goal of mine too.
I struggle with that too. I started the year with exit tickets, And then we kept running out of time for them, and I was just kind of like, I felt like it was taking more time than it was worth to do it.
Right. And so it's like, yeah, we'll continue this tomorrow. See y'all tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so, but then, I mean, I honestly don't see anything wrong with that. I know whenever we're being evaluated, I'm sure they'll dock us for it, but
Right.
I don't see anything wrong with saying we're going to continue this learning tomorrow, and then using that as a segue to like your next lesson. Like, remember yesterday when we finished doing this, let's keep looking at it. And
you actually said something in class, and I'm trying to remember if I wrote it down. Oh yeah, you kind of at the very end of the class, you said something about what they were going to be doing tomorrow, and it was almost like a teaser.
mm-hmm.
You know, like we're going to talk about this later.
Oh yeah. When they asked about, what did they ask about? Oh, the sun, I think it was, maybe. I can't remember when that was brought up, but one of the students was like shocked that the sun was a medium-sized star. And I was like, well, interesting enough. We're going to talk about how there's really nothing special about our sun.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think that kind of serves as an exit, because it's like, okay, well, what we learned today is going to be integral for what we're learning tomorrow. So I think that's great, and I don't think, necessarily did we have an exit ticket shows that we have the objective.
How did you assess their learning every single day? Well, I don't. I don't do that every day.
Right. Yeah. So, well, anyway, thank you, Katie, for letting me watch your class. I learned a ton. And so I'm going to get this to you here in a little bit, and hopefully you can read my handwriting, and it's terrible, and I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I'm sorry that took so long.
Oh, it's good.
So I hate videoing.